Hey everyone, so today I wanted to make this video to basically share some information and more so a realization through understanding that I had and how it relates to the health of our planet and ourselves. And so arable industrial agriculture is what I want to talk about. And basically that type of agriculture uses cultivation methods and chemicals that essentially destroy the soil. So the soils in arable fields in the Western world mostly are so damaged today that most of them are unable to support plant life at all without any use of chemicals. And so many people, including myself, before I learned this, don't know that healthy topsoil is actually one of the most concentrated sources of carbon on Earth. And so just like a healthy community above the ground, below the ground, you need a lot of diversity, and that includes everything from bacteria, fungi, protozoa, microbes, worms, insects, moles, all things that feed on each other as well as help each other survive. And so where am I getting with this? The industrial agriculture destroys topsoil, and through that, it becomes thin and loses the ability to hold water. And so therefore it loses the ability to hold a living community, and it basically turns to dust. And now as the soil gets destroyed so that we can have, these mass-produced low-quality farms, that carbon in that once rich topsoil is released into the atmosphere. And so when all these people want to talk about global warming, most of them don't mention the exact reason that I just listed as being one of the leading factors. And if you do that, you're either ignorant or you're hiding something. And for me, I was most definitely ignorant before. And amongst all human activity, industrial agriculture causes the biggest damage to the environment. And I was unaware before, but it is an established fact that all of the deserts that we see in our lands today are not some eighth wonder of the world, right? They're actually the result of human activity. And so a great example of this is the Great Plains of America. Whenever the Europeans first reached America, what did they find? They wrote all about it. They obviously found massive, pastures, open lands of grass, and massive herds of buffalo everywhere. And over the decades, yes, we not only killed the buffalo, but we turned the land into arable fields. And now the majority of this land is destroyed. So connecting the dots now over to these animals that we couple with these industrialized farms that are confined and overfeeding on grain. Let's talk about grain. Grain is not an appropriate food for cows and other herbivorous animals. It makes them sick. And Mother Nature has really designed them to eat grass and roam on open pasture. And we know this. And you can compare it to humans by the way you see particular groups of humans eating extremely processed foods all day in a living room, barely ever moving their bodies. What happens to them? We get sick, we get fat, and we die. And so why does this happen, you might ask? It's really simple. It's about profits, okay? We all see the huge uproar in marketing for alternative methods. So don't think of it as the other way around. It's always us demanding something and them finding a way to market and sell it to us, right? So as the demand for grass-fed meat has grown, the industry has found a way to happily approve it, right? So animals are locked up in a cage, fed grass, and that grass is harvested from fields that have been sprayed by tons of chemicals. And the grass is usually one or two species of a hybrid grass. And these types of grasses we know are hybrid and not natural because they're not able to grow on natural pastures because they can't survive without chemicals and certain fertilizers. So if you're worried that this could be happening to you, no problem. What you need to look for is not only grass-fed, but particularly organic from pasture-raised farms and pastures as well, okay? So you can tell the difference. It smells different, it tastes different, And if you're able to actually run some tests, you'll see it for yourself. And so the same thing happens for commercial egg producers, right? They use feed for their chickens that contains synthetic dye to make the egg yolks yellow. And without this dye, the yolk would be way too pale to be acceptable for the store to sell to you. So eggs from chickens that range free on organic pastures obtain their color in their yolk from carotenoids. And these carotenoids are coming from natural substances that they get from grass, worms, grubs, and the insects that they eat. Another thing about commercial chickens is they're fed soy. But if you didn't know, as I also didn't know before, soy is actually indigestible by our actual stomach. It has to wait until it hits the microbes. Microbes are the only thing that can digest soy. But that's the thing about traditional cultures, traditional Asian cultures, they knew this. And so what did they do before they ate things like soy? First of all, it was extremely high quality, coming from the natural fields. But what they did is they fermented it first, so that during fermentation you actually have microbes breaking something down, so it's much easier to digest for the body once you actually put it in. But they're not doing that, obviously, with these commercial chickens. And so for me, and kind of tying this back into the realization that I had, I tried vegetarianism, I tried veganism, and I did it because of the cruelty that was happening to these animals caught in the industrial system. So unfortunately, I fell into the industry's hopes that I would see that, and I would turn away from it right into another bucket that they made for me, which was eating only plants and demanding more produce from industrialized mass production farms. So the right thing to do, in my opinion, is to not stop eating meat, eggs, and dairies, except for in some scenarios, depending on your lifestyle and your situation with your health, but actually on a general basis to start buying them from organic, natural farmers. Okay? And I've talked about meat and eggs, but what about milk? Great question. I love this topic because first and foremost, my great-grandfather actually had a dairy farm along with many of our ancestors, right? But the industry was unhappy about the amount of milk a normal cow could actually produce. So again, it comes down to profits. Scientists found a solution, of course, with and for big corporations, big industries, and they created a new breed for a cow in a laboratory. Now this is crazy, a lot of people don't know this, but today we have a large black and white cow. The black and white spots. Did you know that that's actually a laboratory made cow that was made for the purpose that it could produce 3 times more milk per day than the average brown or black cow? I didn't know that, and I'm just starting to learn all these things, but it's pretty interesting. And these cows are essentially kind of like that hybrid grass I was talking about. They're not natural, and we know that because they cannot survive on grass only. They have to be fed grain, soya, and many other additives to actually survive, which is weird. And 75% of these cows or more are sick and have mastitis, and therefore they require antibiotics, which end up in the milk that you drink. So unhealthy cows produce unhealthy milk. Pretty simple, right? And for me, early on in my research, I figured the majority of the research showing that milk linked to all these degenerative diseases was because of something naturally in the milk itself. But the more I learned, I realized that it was the terrible diets, the terrible lifestyles of the medication-pumped, lab-made cows that could not help but produce unhealthy milk. So what do? Best thing we can do, again, find a local organic farmer near you who sells raw, unpasteurized milk. So the industry has found a loophole in that too. They start mixing up a lot of lobbying dollars and passing regulations and laws to a lot of times ban this type of milk from stores. A lot of the shopping that I do comes from a couple of different stores, and for instance at Whole Foods, a pretty popular health store, won't sell raw unpasteurized milk, because what they tell you is there are possibilities of infections, right? But the research shows that it's very safe to drink, and in fact, the raw unpasteurized milk is better protected from infections than pasteurized milk because it's full of living things, right? If you think about it, just like in our guts, it's full of living probiotics, protozoa, microbes that help, protect our immune system, fight off disease. When we pasteurize milk, we kill it. It becomes a dead substance. And if we buy from organic farms, these farms are held to very strict standards in terms of hygiene, so there shouldn't be any worry there. And all in all, the solution is not easy, but it's necessary, and it has to come from the bottom up. They're not going to change it for us. It's our demand that makes a difference. And so find these farms around you, farms that take care of their lands in the most natural way with organic, diversified farms and raising happy and healthy animals. And if you're interested in terms of where you can find these farms, at least locally here in the Dallas area, let me know. Otherwise, you can do some simple searches online and find what you need. But anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Hope y'all are doing well, and